Ли се? Да. Добро утро на всички.
Good morning, everybody. Mr. Minister, if you want to come here to the platform to join me, I hope that there is no people outside. Thank you to each of you who took the risk to be here physically. We will have a video streaming parallel for the people that we could not register to be physically here. My name is Gergana Pasi, and I'm a president of the Digital Coalition. It's an honor for me to even in a change form, to have a second event, CyberSec Sofia, that we started in 2019 together with the magazine Economics and with many partners. And that turned out to be quite a success. Of course, the environment was quite different there. We had about 300 people, 15 laboratories, and then we had a stress test for the whole humanity that really concerned our event, and we had to just reject it. Now we have our second edition in a hybrid format with only 100 people here present in our discussion, and we hope that we will have more people online because the topic was quite important, especially after this health economic crisis that's still going on with the different dynamics. During those months, the office, our GP, the school, our meetings with friends were in front of the screen of our computer. That's why all the analysts point out to a raise of the cyber threats. That's why we believe that from all this crisis, we will have our conclusions, the public administration, the private players would have to change the way of all activities in the internet media. I want to thank our Minister of the Transport and Communications, Mr. Zhelyaskov, that he took my request and invitation to be here to say a few words, because COVID-19 really put a lot of pressure on the public administration as well. So I would like to start with the question whether this pandemic changed the environment and created challenges to the public administration, and how the public administration would react to be more resilient in such crisis. Yes. We are all witnesses that during the last decades, it wasn't easy because in the past, when we had different rights, human rights, to have now the free movement of capital, people, the world became small and people started traveling a lot. And this just became the natural behavior. And then everything stopped. And it stopped not only because of the pandemic, of the fear, of the loss of trust, but it really was transferred to the virtual world. So the physical world was removed, but people really started traveling and doing many different things in this internet media, and this really increased a lot the exchange and transfer of data, and it placed many expectations to the ecosystem, and this is the raising of the cyber security. With all the threats that existed in the past as the hybrid attacks, malware on the information network, during the last months we became witnesses of many attacks that are connected with the topics of our different behavior in the virtual media, phishing attacks to the educational systems, healthcare systems. You know about the big attack to the German supercomputer, which was in the process of developing a vaccine for COVID-19. So the variety increases and also the level of threat increases. Of course, the behavior is always more reactive than proactive. But what we are doing together with all the other countries has three directions. First of all, it's monitoring and analysis of the cyber threats and cyber attacks. Second is the cyber simulations done in Bulgaria. And the third one is the training of the public administration, especially when the virtualization of the networks that the administration works with right now are used for the distance working. I believe unconditionally that every crisis is also an opportunity, and I think that in this context of the sum of money that the European Union gave to the member states, Bulgaria should receive 6 billion and 200 million euro, and we have to invest those money in the digital industry and cybersecurity. Do we have a plan how we would prioritize our politics? Could you share a bit about that? Yes, you're right. Concerning the hypothesis of the sum of money, we should not look to the European financing as an unconditional approach. This is not unconditional money. They are indicatives, and for Bulgaria, it's 6.2 billion euros for the mechanism of resilience. It's not only to mitigate the consequences of the crisis on the economy, but to invest in the future, in the synergy of all the different policies. You know that the European Union planned a serious agenda for the next decades, innovation, digitalization. And from that money, it's minimum 20% for projects that guarantee the synergy between the different policies. So it's time that the state would not be only a regulator of these processes, but a participant as well. For example, building of digital highways, registers, digital registers, topics connected with overcoming of the digital separation. So these are approaches and not just goal in itself. And the real goals we have to achieve together with the business. We had the opportunity together with the business to really make a framework for different projects, for building of the physical infrastructure that will allow us fast exchange of electronic communication, where there is a digital separation to overcome it, but together with the business. So I think that the state should be proactive where there is no business interest or approach, and on the other hand, the business should give an opportunity to the state and the public administration to distribute and allocate this infrastructure. In Bulgaria, there is a quite a good infrastructure for informational exchange, and now we are in the process of integration, and that will give us an opportunity for this digital approach. So these big projects are turned to this big picture in the context that what Europe expects from us, resilience of the policies for the next decades. I have memories from the time where you took over the National Agency for Electronic Governance. And I think now that what we lack as a state and society, it's just a clear set of goals and following those goals with specific projects. That's why I'm waiting to see how Bulgaria would be set in the big strategy of the European Union to 2025 to free uninterrupted 5G coverage to even from the most urban areas to the smaller places. Do we have this highway goal so that the projects would serve that goal? I would just say the big goal is clear. The terms are set and they're really accessible. But here is the question about trust. You all know that in those times, quite a lot of people, consumers, are looking for simple answers. That gives an opportunity for growing of different myths and opportunities for interpretation to occult and all different influence of technology. Yes, I just shared that we will allocate the resources and we will encourage investment with different measures, starting with just distribution, targeted investments in this line, and overcoming of the mistrust of using the new technologies. Right now, we can see that because of the competition in the approach, or just trying to really reach digital indicators, the 5G now is an upgrade for the 4G network, and it will be with a higher speed. And I really believe and hope that the industry would be more communicative with society, so that the society could be ensured that there would be no bad consequences. So infrastructure could not be a goal in itself. It should give more qualitative services to the society. So we saw how during pandemic, the usage of that network as the speed and resilience gave an opportunity to just give services as distance work, distance education. Up to 2025, according to the requirements, we will reach the goals. Thank you very much for your participation here. The messages you gave to the business, I hope it could be heard in this room also, and also online environment. There are a lot of representatives of the business. I would like just before saying goodbye to the Minister Zhelaskov and go into our working program, to say that even though this event should be a bit small by objective reasons, but we have a lot of partners because this topic is very strategic. And in this event, as our partner is NATO, the Foundation Konrad Adenauer, and I'm thankful to them. And you will see now for the first time the new General Secretary of NATO, which will give us our video message. And then I will ask Mr. to come here and said, so let's just see the video message. I will thank you again, and also to really overcome the myths of the 5G mystery. And we will participate in that process as well, and we believe that this is part of the progress. I just want to wish you health and be cyber clear, so keep distance between yourselves.
Hello from Brussels. Thanks to Gergana Passi for her kind introduction. Also, great thank you to the National Digital Alliance for organizing this webinar. NATO Public Diplomacy Division is happy to be supporting it. I will say a few words about the themes that are so important to all of us, which is cyber, resilience and disinformation. They are all connected. And I hope that this will contribute to fruitful discussions of your webinar. So first, on cybersecurity and defense. Cyberspace is central to all our societies. And it's even more important than ever now with the digitalization of everything as a consequence of COVID-19 pandemic. And I want to underline that all the opportunities that we have, be it digital development, services, education, depend on cybersecurity. It depends on cyber defense. So it depends not only on the governments, but on each one of us in our societies. How aware, knowledgeable, and ready to act we are. NATO as organization embraced this challenge quite many years ago, already since 2008. And in consequent years, NATO has advanced to both recognize the threats and take actions against them. And in terms of actions that NATO has taken, it's very clear. One important aspect is that it's part of core task of collective defense. It's part of everyday work that NATO as organization is doing. So the protection of our infrastructure networks is what has been strengthened. NATO has integrated cyber defense in its military operations as an integral part of these operations. And also NATO has recognized that international law applies to cyberspace. So not only international law applies to everyday relations in real life, but also to cyber. Already in 2019, NATO Secretary General said that the alliance could respond with Article 5 in case by a cyber attack. That has not happened yet. And we see that more and more of the cyber threats and attacks are happening in the gray zone, just below this military action. And that is what we expect how it will be also in the future. So in that respect, it's very important that the allies and all of us, all our societies are as resilient as possible. These types of threats, both on military side but also on civilian, in terms of what we are doing as NATO, are addressed through a variety of means. We have a rapid reaction cyber defense team. We have regular exercises that NATO organizes for our military but also civilians. And we have also so-called framework to increase resilience. And that is through NATO defense ministerial meetings, and that is the Article 3 of Washington Treaty, which calls for all allies to do everything necessary to be nationally resilient. So through the defense minister's decisions, this article has become much more sort of operational and implemented. So what we see is so-called baseline requirements that defense ministers accepted, and that was triggered by the pandemic. And these baseline requirements provide for strengthening and the defense of critical sectors such as energy, transport, communications, health, and more protection of those. It also deals with the impact of 5G and other new technologies. Baseline requirements also address threats from cyber, security of supply chains, and foreign ownership and control of infrastructure. Any vulnerability in these areas can be potentially exploited by potential adversaries. So protecting this infrastructure is fundamental to our security. By following these guidelines and implementing them, our societies work to be prepared to face crises and to recover faster when these crises occur. One more area where I would like to say a few words is on the work we have been doing to counter disinformation that became where attacks happened during the COVID-19 pandemic, and both the disinformation and misinformation became one of the central works of my division and how we countered it. So we actively monitor what is happening in information environments, and we do it in a very advanced way through special tools. We call out disinformation attacks, we debunk when we see lies, and we engage with media, civil society in our ally countries, of course, with official sources and journalists to make sure that our point and communications gets through. What was one example I would like to mention is that in April this year, Latvia, Lithuania, and Poland faced a very coordinated disinformation attack. First, a fake letter was released online where on the name of the Secretary General, Jens Stoltenberg, supposedly of NATO withdrawing troops from Lithuania. This was followed by a coordinated campaign on the websites and efforts to distribute through the social media, bots, and other sources. It was very essential that the allies concerned called out these attacks right away locally and alerted NATO. So we joined and amplified and called them out through our sources. So with this early reaction, no great damage was done. We also work very closely with our other partners, not only with allies and civil military, but also with the EU, with the UN, and other international organizations and countries outside NATO. In conclusion, what I would like to say is to make sure that we work to make sure that NATO is prepared for the future. So adaptation for the future is essential. So disruptive technologies, disruptive emerging technologies is very core of our work to prepare NATO for the future. That is both, that concerns investment in our capabilities, digital capabilities, infrastructure, but also knowledge and also regulation where necessary. For example, NATO remains the central platform for military standardization, and it's a source of great strength for our collective defense. So looking further in the future and identifying what NATO needs, what allies need, is the preparation for the future. And that is where Secretary General has clearly identified his NATO 2030 vision of making the alliance stronger politically, stronger military, and more globally engaged. With this, I hope you have a very good discussion today, and many thanks for inviting us, and I look forward working with you in the future. Thank you.